We are back. New York City baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko. One of my co-hosts is with me today, Marty Rose from Jacksonville, originally Jackson Heights.
Yep.
How are you, Marty?
Jackson guy. Yeah. Doing well.
Yes,
doing
yes.
well.
Your big J on your cap. You don't have to buy a new one when you get traded. We have Marty Appel is going to be our guest. He's due on at about 10 minutes from now. And he's going to talk about his newest book. He's kind of a Yankee historian. He's written one or two or three of the consummate books on the Yankees. Peter Golenbach wrote one. Harvey Fromer wrote one that I consider right up there. And Marty has a new project. It's book is released and is zooming up there. It's Casey Stengel, baseball's greatest character. And he'll be on in a few minutes to talk about that. He's been on these airways before. He's a friend of the show, and he and I go back many, many years. Marty was, before his Yankee days, he was the public relations guy, the media guy for the New York Sets, the New York Apples. Do you remember the tennis team, Marty?
Tennis team? Yeah.
Yeah. My father's first cousin owned that tennis team, and his name was Saul Berg, and he had Billie Jean King and Margaret Thatcher, not Margaret Thatcher, Margaret Smith, an English player. Margaret Thatcher did not have
I don't think she played.
She didn't play. She just no backhands, and really and truthfully, her serve was hittable. But Marty, and we met way back then in those days, and he's been on the show several times. He brought Fritz Peterson with him once. Is this Marty? Do I hear him in the background? Anyway, he brought Fritz Peterson to the show once, and he told a great story. I'm gonna save it for when he comes on. And you and I, Marty Rose, are going to talk about opening day in the New York Mets. How they won handedly behind Thor, who, if you got to have a god, Thor's as good as any, as far as I'm concerned.
Did come up with this blister on his middle finger.
Yeah, that was it. Was it his thumb or his middle finger?
Middle finger. And Terry said that they're going to push him back one day for his next start. So he was supposed to pitch Saturday. And Gazelman was going to pitch on Sunday. He was going to pitch Saturday because that would have been 4 days rest. So instead, they're going to give him 5 days rest, pitch Gazelman, which would have been his turn anyway, and give Syndergaard the extra day. So he's going to go Sunday. So it's not, it's nothing serious. Just going to give him an extra day, so the blister heals. But,
he was literally
very
overpowering. And I heard some stats on the broadcast that were incredible. This guy averages about 98 miles an hour on his fastball all game. Fastest off-speed pitch, fastest slider, 91 miles an hour.
Saying his off-speed pitch is 93. And Teheran's off-speed pitch was like 83 or 84, something like that.
Right.
And that's the guy that they never hit, by the way. That's why it was nothing in the sixth inning. They never hit this guy. Tehran.
He's
really good.
It isn't all. It's deception. It isn't all speed and power. Happens to be on a day like this, good with Syndergaard. His amazing control also brings to mind that Nolan Ryan, another fastball pitcher who started with the Mets, had a blister problem, if I recall, and they had some sort of concoction made up for him to soak his blister in.
Yeah, pickle brine.
Pickle brine, yeah. Rube Walker, I think, probably came up with that years ago, and that seemed to work. So maybe they'll break out the pickle brine and
there you go.
See what happens. Beautiful game. You know what I took from it? Duda got a base hit off a left-hander.
A big hit.
A big hit off the left.
Yeah.
Yep. That could say an awful lot about their chances this year.
Definitely. Yeah.
Plain and simple. They were thinking of like platooning him with Flores, and they still might do that against certain tough lefties. I'd like to see Flores play a little bit here and a little bit there, and just give Walker a day off every now and again. He could play third, move Reyes over to short, give Cabrera a day off. It could be very interesting. This, I think, if Conforto's going to stay up, and if they could give him enough at-bats off the bench, this could be their deepest bench that certainly Terry Collins has ever had, and the deepest bench they've had in a long time. So I'm very excited. Things look nice. Gesellman looked okay. You have your days.
Well, first two guys got on, but then he got out of it. So.
He got out of it, right. And there are some pitchers that take pride in getting themselves in and out of trouble, and they can do that. And the winning pitchers oftentimes do. So let's see what happens. This could be a very, very good year now that I think about it. Health notwithstanding, Rivera caught, and
yes, he did.
It wasn't a big surprise. Collins pretty much said it. He was never really firm about it. But and I noticed that Syndergaard was throwing over a little bit and keeping the runner on, and
if you watch his motion, when guys are on base, he's lifting his leg about half as much as he used to. So he used to come up, pretty much all the way to his waist, with the leg kick, and now if you pay attention to that, you'll see he's only going maybe halfway before he delivers. So to cut down on the delivery time. So, but I'm sure Darno's going to play, probably, with everybody else. And Rivera's going to just catch Syndergaard every game like he did last time. So.
I heard the magic bell. Can I introduce my guest?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Are you here, Marty?
I am, yes.
All right. Now, coming to the comfortably zoned microphone, number 7, Marty Appel. Number 7.
Well done.
Well done, huh? Tell me a little bit about the voice of the Yankees, Marty Appel, book writer, Casey Stengel, book writer. His name blanks at
Bob
the
Shepard?
Bob Shepard from St. John's University.
Right.
When did you first meet him, Bob? And I'd like you to meet Marty Rose, my co-host.
Hello, Marty.
Yeah, we've been on before. Good. Glad you could make it today.
So, Bob Shepard, the answer to that is He started in 1951. His first game was Mickey Mantle's first game. And by the time I started working for the Yankees in 1968, he was already a legend. His voice was, you knew you were in Yankee Stadium.
Right. In the old-timers days that you put together, basically it was the Yankees announcers that did the job from the field. There was Messer and Rizzuto. Bob Shepard didn't get too involved with that, did he, if I recall?
No, he would just introduce, we turn your attention to the microphone at home plate, and Frank Messer.
Do you still get goosebumps when his voice comes on a YouTube or a tape?
Oh, yeah, and, Derek Jeter used it as his announcement that he was batting, even after Bob Shepard died in 2009, and it continued to be the voice announcing Derek Jeter until Jeter retired.
Wow. Yeah, a great memory. We, Marty and I, spent a lot of time in Yankee Stadium and heard that voice an awful lot. Great memories. We're here to talk about Casey. What was your first meeting with Casey? He was obviously long gone as the Yankee manager. He was retired before you got to the Yankees. Even retired as a Met manager. I assume it was on Old Timers Day. And tell me about your first meeting and how you got on and what it was like for you.
Right. It was a great and memorable time. He was fired by the Yankees after the 1960 season when he lost the World Series to Pittsburgh. And he managed the Mets, but basically he was estranged from the Yankees for that whole decade of the 60s. Because he was bitter over the way he'd been fired after winning 10 pennants in 12 years. So he never accepted any invitation to Old Timers Day. He didn't come back for Mickey Mantle Day, nothing. He was just not going to be there. In 1970, Bob Fischel, my boss, the PR director of the Yankees, reached out to him again with another Old Timers Day invitation. But this time he said, Casey, in a handwritten note on the bottom, he said, Casey, we'd love to have you, and if you can be with us, we'd love to retire your number 37 that day. Well, a couple of things. Number one, numbers being retired were pretty uncommon back then, and Casey knew the significance of this. There had only been 4 Yankee numbers retired, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, and Mickey Mantle. So he knew this was a big deal. And he liked Bob Fischel. He never held his firing against Bob. So he felt the time was right. And from his home in Glendale, California, he consulted with his wife. She was a little reluctant, but she said, oh, okay, if you feel it's worth going, let's bury the hatchet. So they came back. They had a great time. It was a terrific ceremony. In fact, I opened the book. Chapter 1 is his decision to go back. And then, of course, later on in the book comes the actual day. So he was greeted warmly, lovingly by the fans and by his old players. The funny coda to the story is that like a week later, I get a postcard in the mail just addressed to the Yankees, Yankee Stadium, Bronx, New York. And it's his big, familiar handwriting. It wasn't addressed to anybody in particular, but it came to my desk, and it just said, Mrs. Stengel and I had a marvelous time seeing old friends. My expense report will follow in the mail. In the meantime, thanks to everyone, and thank you for my prize. Well, he used the word prize for the present that we gave everybody, a little clock radio, but that was so precious to me that he said, thank you for my prize. I just thought that was beautiful.
Did you keep that card just out of curiosity, and do you keep memorabilia?
I didn't keep enough, and that was one I should have kept, right?
Oh, okay.
I did not. It went into the Old Timers Day file for 1970, where I suspect it still sits.
to just spend time. That Yankee office is a museum. Has to be. Casey and the Mick. What were they really like? Was it
it was kind of
the son thing, or was it? Did they? There seemed to be something where Casey was always pushing Mick beyond what Mick thought in terms of, is he going to play? How hurt is he? That kind of thing. Was it copacetic? Did they have a good relationship?
They did, but there were times they didn't. And in the end, Mickey was a disappointment to Casey. I mean, Mickey won 2 MVP awards under Casey. He won a Triple Crown, went to the World Series every year. But Casey thought he had Babe Ruth talent. And when he wasn't Babe Ruth, Casey ultimately felt he was a disappointment. And late in Casey's tenure, he was asked to name his best all-time Yankee team, and he picked Hank Bauer over Mickey Mantle, hard as that is to believe, and nothing against Hank, of course.
No.
But it was a reflection of just, in the end, Mickey fell short of Casey's hopes. He had hoped he was going to be managing Babe Ruth.
Okay. What was Casey's family like? His dad. Did Casey meet his dad's expectations?
Yeah, I think so. And his parents were very supportive. They lived in Kansas City. They would sometimes go to Chicago or St. Louis to see him play, or later on to visit him when he was managing. His father's business, he had a horse-drawn cart that sprayed water on the unpaved roads of Kansas City to keep the dust from flying around. And as Casey later wrote in his own memoir, he said, and then they started paving the streets, and my father's business was what you would call defunct.
Casey did have a marvelous way with words.
He did have a marvelous way with words.
He did go to dental school, right?
His best expression, I thought, he says, everybody has his day, and I've had a few of mine, or something close to that.
There comes a time in every man's life, and I've had plenty of them, and that's on his grave in Glendale, California.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, that stands out. Marty Rose.
Yes.
Give me some Casey memories things that you want to share with Mr. Appel or find out.
Well, as long as we're going back that far, what about his dental school gig? I mean, was that his idea?
I'm glad you brought that up.
His idea? Yeah.
A little bit of both. The parents wanted him to have something to fall back on. So right out of high school, even though he didn't graduate high school, he had enough credits where they would take him in dental school. Sounds a little like Trump University, maybe. They took him, and he went 3 semesters during the off seasons, and then he decided it wasn't really a profession for him because he was left-handed, and getting left-handed dental equipment was pretty tricky. Now, as I write in the book, what took them so long to reach this conclusion? They could have reached it on the first day, you would think, right? So I don't know the answer to that, but he gave him 3 years of tuition and then realized it wasn't for him.
Wow.
And this was he would have been an actual dentist. It wasn't like a practitioner or an assistant.
No, he would have been an actual dentist, and he even said to people, you want to be an orthodontist, not a dentist, because people will spend money on their kids, but not on themselves. And in those days, you only got 25 cents a filling.
Well, was he playing ball at that time as well?
I'm sorry?
Was he playing ball at that time as well, like part-time?
Yeah, this was in the off-season that he would go to dental school.
Oh, okay. So he
was a big hero with his classmates because they were like, wow, we got a professional baseball player among us.
Oh, so he was already drafted by then.
Yeah, he started playing minor league ball in 1910, and his first team was in Kankakee, Illinois, and they were the Lunatics, not making this up. The ballpark was next door to an asylum for the insane, and the newspapers would refer to to the team as the Lunatics. So not politically correct today, but the newspaper headlines were there every day with the Lunatics.
That's a lot of things aren't politically correct nowadays.
Sounds like today's minor league team names.
Well, they're pretty creative today.
Yeah. Trumbo Shrimp.
What did you find out, Marty, about Casey in your research that surprised you the most?
Well, I was given an unpublished manuscript by his wife, Edna. She wrote this in 1958, and it presented a side of Casey that nobody really knew. His marriage life, his courtship, his wedding, the fact that Edna Stengel traveled with the team constantly. They had no children. She was always by his side. She was the first lady of the team wherever she was. And it was a wonderful relationship they had. He turned over all his paychecks to her. She was in charge of the finances. And she wrote, Casey's never given me a present in all these years, not birthday, Christmas, anniversary. He just told me, you take all the money and buy whatever you want. And it worked for them.
Worked for them. I read in your book his proposal to Edna.
Pretty romantic, huh?
Very romantic.
He was with Edna, and he said, so, you want me to convert to Catholic or what? that was the proposal.
that was. They were bottom line people, and they did, in essence, adopt the players. Billy Martin, for one. We could probably talk about that relationship all day long. Anything about that relationship that surprised you in your research?
Well, it didn't surprise me because I knew Billy well and I was close to the story, but it will surprise readers, I think. Billy was Casey's boy. It says that on his plaque in Monument Park. He played for Casey in the minor leagues at Oakland. And then he played so far above his abilities with the Yankees. Casey loved the guy. He was a World Series hero. In 1957, Billy was part of a fight that broke out at the Copacabana nightclub in New York, and he was traded a few weeks later. Billy always resented that Casey didn't stand up for him and prevent this trade from happening. He was supposed to be Casey's guy. And he didn't talk to Casey for 20 years after that. He was so bitter. Casey, when asked about it, why don't you talk to Billy? And Casey would just say, tell Billy Martin to grow up. This is the profession he chose. People get traded every day. Get on with it. It's stupid for him to make an issue out of it. So it was a very pragmatic view of that. It was, he thought Billy was way offline, just thinking that Casey should have gone to bat for him.
Towards the end, they were estranged for a long time, and towards the end, I understand from reading your book that they reconciled. And was it ever really the same?
Well, it wasn't the same because they weren't together all the time as they were when they were both wearing the Yankee uniform. But they would encounter each other at gatherings, old-timers days, things like that, and they were cordial. They were okay. But Billy was the only Yankee to go to Casey's funeral in Glendale in 1985, and 1975, and he actually slept in Casey's bed the night of the funeral.
Oh, wow. That's a little strange. Is complicated. Not being judgmental, but sure he felt close to him in a way that he wouldn't have. Was Casey a good guy? Would you call him a good guy?
I would call him a good guy. I would have enjoyed being in his company more. I think he was entertaining. His knowledge of baseball, I would have just couldn't have gotten enough. It was, fantastic. The recall he had and the names he could come up with that, were like, to us, baseball history, and here he actually knew these guys. Great story was when Sandy Koufax no-hit the Mets in 1962. Koufax was already becoming Sandy Koufax, and some of the writers after the game wanted to know, so Casey, you think Koufax might be the best ever? And Casey said, oh, no, that would be Grover Cleveland Alexander, who had pitched when Casey broke in 1912. So with lines like that, he would have the press just eating out of his hand. I mean, it was just so charming with the press, and he had these great stories.
Look it up.
And you could look it up, one of his great expressions.
Right. He also said he's very pragmatic. When he was Mertz and I's age, he was fired by the Yankees. And at that...
He made the mistake.
I guess it was a presser after the press conference. He said to the press, well, I'll never make the mistake of being 70 years old again.
And he never did. But then the Mets hired him when he was 72, and he reinvented himself. He knew his responsibility at the Mets was to win the hearts of the fans and take attention away from the bad playing on the field, and he totally accomplished that. He got it done. He became this lovable old man that drew such attention to the Mets that by the Mets' third season, which they had moved into Shea Stadium by then, they were outdrawing the Mantle and Maris Yankees. And Casey gets a lot of credit for that.
Right. He also brought Yogi Berra over as first a player coach along the time that they had Spawn, and they were the oldest battery in history. And those were good. So you remember those times, Mert? They were bad, and Casey made it okay. Remember Warren Spahn's great line? He said, I played for Casey before he was a genius, and now after he was a genius. So it might go to show you that the players you have contribute an awful lot to the manager's success.
He would have said, I couldn't have done it without my players.
Right? He always said that. He never took. I remember Charlie Dressen had a line when he was a Dodger manager. He said, "Oh, just keep it close, guys. I'll think of something."
That's right.
What kind of freaking ego is that? And how is a professional player gonna respond to something like that? I'll give you where I credit Casey is in two ways. Casey did have the players, but he had two separate dynasties. The one where he won from when he was hired in 49 to 53, and he won more games in 54 than any other Yankee team, and should have kept it going there, were it not for Cleveland. But my point is, there was a total changeover in players. He went from DiMaggio to Mickey, and then Maris or Bauer to Maris. Everybody changed over. The entire infield, catchers, he went to, and it didn't seem like he missed a beat. That takes talking about all the egos he dealt with too. That takes an incredible amount of skill. Do you agree? It
did take skill, but of course it took from being with the New York Yankees, whose farm system was so deep that there came a point in time when, like almost every other team in baseball, had a cast-off catcher from the Yankees. Yogi was with the Yankees, and then they trade off the Yogi's backups to get other people. So Casey was a genius for platooning, moving guys in and out. But, boy, when you're able to substitute Gene Woodling and Hank Bauer or Jerry Coleman and Gil McDougall,
right.
You know you got a wealth of talent to work with, and that's a big thing.
Right. You mentioned Billy Martin being an incredible overachiever. He was. He came up big in those Yankee World Series games that I think his whole thing, he wanted to outplay Jackie Robinson. And
yeah, he put on that uniform. It was like a fraternity jacket to him. He just played over his head, and it was a beautiful thing to see. You seldom see that today. The guys are, playing for the big salaries now, but they kind of meet the Peter principle. They kind of meet what they're expected to do. That Billy Martin could so surpass that was a rarity. Beautiful thing to see.
Right. Casey would not have come back 5 times. He would not have put himself in that George Steinbrenner windmill that his ego was more intact than that. Billy just had to be the manager of the Yankees, no matter what. It's
very true, because that carried over to his managing days with the Yankees.
Yeah. Anything that you're sorry you put in the book and wish you hadn't, and is there anything that you wish you would have put in the book but you hadn't?
Well, no to the first question.
Okay.
Of course, the book's only been out a week. But,
okay, but it was public. The final decision was made months ago as to what was going on. Have you had no regrets as to what, if no to the first question, anything to the second question where you say, wow, I wish I'd have put that one in?
Not really. I mean, in researching the book, I had access to all the archives of minor league newspapers early in his life. And that was a wealth of material that had long been buried. Bob Creamer wrote a great book on Casey in the 80s, but he didn't have that kind of access available. So I found a lot of stuff, and in the end I actually had to cut a lot of the stuff. It didn't change his life story, but there were some pretty good anecdotes in there, funny things that happened in the minor leagues. It was just that... Give
me one of those anecdotes.
I was afraid you're going to ask, and I can't remember, to be honest with you. I'd have to do a little homework before we did the interview. But it would be a complicated tale, but none of the players would be recognizable to the readers today. So we said, it's a good story, but let's take it out. So we did.
Okay. I understand that. What's next on your plate, Marty?
I don't have another project lined up. Hope something inspires me, and I just say, that'll be fun. Let's go for it. But for now, just doing the interviews for the book, hoping people enjoy it, and we'll see what comes along.
Beautiful. Marty Rose, anything you'd like to ask Mr. Appel before?
Yeah, one thing about, does he get credit for starting instructional baseball?
Very good question, and the answer is yes.
Yeah, I heard.
Good question. He was
developed into the early, I guess, spring training or the rookie leagues or whatever.
Yeah,
fall league. Arizona Fall League.
Yeah, well, other teams resented it. They think, the Yankees being the Yankees, here they are taking advantage, getting a head start. They got the money to do it. Mm-hmm. So there was the usual anti-Yankee sentiment about it, but it worked to Casey's favor, worked to the Yankees' favor, and that's where they saw a lot of the players who would become big stars for them for the first time.
He considered himself to be a teacher, didn't he? He loved to instruct.
He would take his team base by base in spring training. Everybody gather around first base. Here are all the things that can happen offensively and defensively at this position. And he'd go through it all, the same drill, but things that maybe the new players hadn't ever been taught on other organizations. And it was kind of a fascinating thing to see.
Good. Quick takes on current Yankees and Mets. Real quick takes. What do you think? What do you think's coming up in this year? This is opening day week, and just want to hear it before we let you go, Marty Appel.
Well, I think it's a lot to ask for the Yankees to have all these young players that they have come through together. They got lucky in 1996 when they had Pettit and Jeter and Rivera all blossom at once, but that's a lot to ask. So I think there's going to be some growing pains and some disappointment, and I don't think the Yankees are quite there yet to go back to the World Series. But Gary Sanchez, I'd say, appears to me to be the real deal and reminds me very much of Thurman Munson. So let's hope that comes to be.
Well,
and you asked about the Mets, and they're dazzling. The pitching staff, it's like I watched Syndergaard today. He got a blister on his finger and had to leave the game, but what a find he was, especially that they got him in a trade. It's, usually you just pray you get somebody like that through your own farm system. Mets are going to be exciting, and I wonder if Matt Harvey will straighten out and become an ace of the staff, as it sort of looked like he was capable of being.
Right.
Yeah, he's going to be a big key this year for them, no question about it.
Yeah.
The one and two guys look real good, like DeGrom and Syndergaard.
But I'm looking forward to Wednesday night to see Bartolo Colon pitch for the Braves against the Mets.
Against the Mets.
Yeah.
He got a huge ovation today. When they were,
they show clips. I've got the MLB TV little thing that streams onto devices and what have you. Between innings, they had a clip of Bartolo throwing a guy out with a behind the back flip at first base. A totally entertaining guy who one of those guys that makes baseball fun. A character, somebody to watch, and
yeah, absolutely.
He'll be missed for the intangibles, the way he talks to the other players and passes on stuff.
I look at him and I turn to my wife and I say, "You do know he's young enough to be my son."
And she probably said, "You don't have to remind me of that, Marty."
She doesn't have to say it.
Good night, gentlemen. Thank you very much. This was wonderful. Same time, same bat station next week. Actually, it'll be a little later for us, but we'll be back, and we'll have Robert Denninger, the other co-host, with us. Thank you, Marty Appel.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Really enjoyed it. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Marty Rose.
Yep. Have a good week, everybody.